meeting. Given that we're like Ashwini said, it's a crowd which is more suited for an intimate discussion. I also thought it would be nice if I could just get an introduction, everybody's introduction, and also if you could just tell why federalism is of interest for you. It'll be good to help sort of steer the discussion. Maybe we could start with Shekhar.
I'm Srikara. I'm the operations manager at Dhwani. Federalism is important. I mean, I'm interested in federalism because of events of current affairs, basically in the last 10 years maybe, in which many people say there has been an abuse of the abuse of central agencies and they are interfering with the states, and there are instances of passage of laws that affect the states. Some might say it is encroaching into the state's mandate. And there is also nowadays there's a discussion about the assertiveness of South India because of what might happen after the next delimitation. So all these are sort of interesting, and that's why I'm interested in federalism.
Thanks.
Hi sir, I'm Spandana. I'm interning at Dhwani. And I think why federalism is important to me, I was just curious to know as to what is the line that has to be drawn when it comes to the central and state, and where the state will end up misusing the freedom they have.
Hi sir, I'm Misbah. I'm too interning at Dhwani. And federalism also interests me because, like Spandana said, even I want to know the boundaries that the state and the center draw so that the center doesn't encroach into the state's activities.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Anusha. I'm working at Dhwani as an associate. For me, I think federalism is something we always think about, like how the state has the power, what powers it has. Although the state has its own power, but still the center comes in between. So we don't understand what exactly the state has. Always the state takes some decision, but center has its own power. So I think it's better to draw that line and understand the gap between these two.
Hello sir, my name is Tamesh. I'm interning at Dhwani. I just wanted to know the boundaries which federalism has. Let's say today's time we have seen the governance bills and all, how the center is approaching on the rights of the states, the autonomy of the states. So we have to know what state has the power, especially our ideals and principles which have been enshrined in the preamble says that every state has its liberty and autonomy. So I just wanted to know more about the federalism.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Akanksha. I work as a lawyer with a Bangalore-based company. I think actually earlier this year when I was speaking with some friends who are also lawyers, and we were all discussing federalism and the limits, and like Shikara was saying, right, in recent times how we've seen possibly abuse. The one point where we sort of got stuck was that somebody said, okay, but then what's the alternative, right? And so I was curious about today's session because I wanted to have some idea of what were the other things, alternatives that were actually discussed.
As a common man, I would like to know how it protects power by state and center.
Hello sir, I am Smriti. I am from the National Law School. I am a second year law student. So actually I came here because of my friend and because of Srinivasan. So this semester we have been taught by Professor Aparna Chandra about comparative constitutional law. So during our Consti 1 course, I was assigned this case of Delhi Governor's power, that case. So I was doing moot on that case, and there are some interesting topics that emerged because while I was interning in the break, what happened is now forest is in the concurrent list. So most of the time, state government, they try to say that if a state act has been enacted, that act has separate field from the Forest Rights Act, because Forest Rights Act, it has been enacted by the central government. Now the state cannot make a law. So it is interesting for me because if they want to take a land of the tribal people, they would say no, this act has been governed under the state act, not the central act. So I think that is why federalism is interesting for me, because that's how you evade the law. And another perspective would be to I think the southern perspective, and in my state, I'm from Odisha. I think my government, they are kind of like doing it illegally, so we always rely upon the center. But for the southern part, I think autonomy is more important. So I think it kinds of go two ways. Like you can rely upon the center or the state government. So I think that is why federalism is important for me, to know where the limit is. So.
Hi sir, I'm Pavan. I'm a fourth year law student from National Law School. I don't really think about federalism as much as I should, but we live in unprecedented times where federalism needs to be strengthened, in the sense that we live in a time where some historians say we have our own Ben Gurion, in the sense that we all track towards a more authoritarian regime that might contain state autonomy. So I think it's important to have discussions surrounding federalism to continue to keep the spirit of federalism in the states, because I think due to the way the present regime operates, we seem to be going towards more and more towards a unitarian state. So,
my name is Gautam. I am third year student at NLS. So I was interested regarding federalism. I was interested in how the relationship between center and states have changed since the Constitution of India was enacted. And one of the interesting thing that I now, when I look at in retrospectively at the debates in the central in the Constituent Assembly, is that many were assuming that center would be more progressive when it comes to social questions. But if you look at, let's say, southern India or Tamil Nadu's approach to caste and gender, there seems to be much more progressive than central government. So this is interesting observation, that notion of center being more progressive has been turned upside down. This is a story of one state. I don't know about other states, all the states, but this is an interesting question that I often think of.
Hi, my name is Vasant. I finished studying in Joseph's. Currently, I'm about to work next week. I'm from Collective. The thing that piqued my curiosity was federalism has long been controversial in at least Tamil Nadu or at least South in general. For example, in one point in the 70s, Indira Gandhi gave an island to Sri Lanka. Like, even till today, people are angry about it. So I want to know how healthy this paternalistic attitude of the center is long run when it comes to the integrity of India. What will this paternalistic attitude do with the center-state relationship?
Hi, my name is Vinay. So my interest in federalism is more recent, and it is all about my identity rather than anything else to do with the government, because of the recent happenings, in whether it is about taxation or about the delimitation or language. And thanks to work, I've been frequenting Delhi in the past 4 or 5 years, and every time I visit Delhi, I feel that my identity, and also it has been a revelation, because I grew up thinking that national identity is supreme and everything else doesn't matter. But over the years, that was what we were fed and grew up on. But suddenly, when that realization happens, especially when you go out of home and you're made to feel like an outsider, then the idea of federalism and what did the makers of the constitution think of regional identities was what got me interested.
When Ashwini was speaking, I just wanted to tell her that this is the famous Vinay. This is the Vinay who's doing the If you don't know of his work, you should look up Reclaim Constitution, and it's really important work that he's doing. So please look it up. Okay, thank you everybody for the introductions and for sharing. I'm not a legal scholar and this will not be like a very technical legal talk, but I wanted to reflect and discuss more on the challenges to federalism that we are facing today. After just speaking about the, the basic principles of the federalism or the model of federalism that India has chosen. I think from the screening we've all seen the sort of debates that happened in the Constituent Assembly itself about whether we want a unitary model, whether we want a federal model, etc. And there were discussions in all ways. There was a fear that if you have too much autonomy, given the fact that the constitution was made in the aftermath of partition, people were also afraid that if there's too much autonomy, then provinces will break away, states will break away. There is also the thing that we've just come out of British rule, and again, even now, if you don't get autonomy, and if the center has too much power, then what is the point of having this constitution? So both sort of concerns were there, and it is at that time that India has chosen this model of federalism that we have. And India's federalism, like India's principle of secularism, is also unique. Our principle of federalism is not the American principle, as we all know, where like states are very independent. And the American federalism model is called a coming together model of federalism, and ours is called a holding together, because we are literally trying to hold. And we all know about Article 1 of the Constitution, which says that India is a union of states. And one thing we must also keep in mind is something that we have also been trying to do with the last few years, is to stop saying central government but to say union government, because this whole notion of center and state indicates a hierarchy, that okay, center is there and state is here, like you're saying paternalistic, right? People think that they are the parents, we are the children, like we have to bow down to the center. So and that was not the intention. So if you see the constitution also, there is nothing called central government, right? It says union government. So we should also start saying like union government and states, and this is something that like when I was saying in the last few years, it's only the last few years that we've also been coming to look at this or think about this, because the challenges to federalism or the challenges to our identity have come in the recent years. I mean, the situation is such that we literally have to wear our identity on our sleeve. I'm wearing a t-shirt with Kannada, a shirt with Kannada alphabets imprinted on it, to say that, not Hindi but like Kannada. I'm actually a Telugu speaker, but I'm a Telugu speaking Kannadiga. I'm from Karnataka. So the threat of Hindi imperialism is like something, that worries us, like Vinay was saying, right? But the sort of threat that Hindi imperialism has brought, or the fact that, it's not just Hindi imperialism, but sort of conception where everything has to be one, right? One nation, one ration, one nation, one election, one nation, one registration, one, right? So we are not unitary. Our constitution is not a unitary constitution. Our constitution is a federal constitution, but we are moving towards a unitary constitution, and which is the concern that all of us are faced with today, right? Now, federalism is not necessarily a legal concept. Federalism is something where you take the sort of social forces in play, the economic forces in play, the cultural forces in play. You look at these situations and then say that, okay, how do I ensure in law that there is cooperation and that these forces do not make my country unitary, right? So in that sense, federalism is only trying to bring into law the sort of society that you want. So it doesn't stem from the law. It's there in the law to facilitate the sort of society that we want. And if you've looked at Indian civilization over the ages, Indian civilization is not a civilization where we strongly believed in a nation state or like a kind of a hyper-nationalism. Even if you look at the writings of Rabindranath Tagore and others, they reject the Western notion of nationalism which was there, of a sort of hyper-nationalism, right? India's identity was tied to the fact that we are a diverse people who try to stay together out of mutual respect. And that's a civilizational quality which has been there. The civilizational aspect is we are diverse, but we want to be together. And when you're diverse and you want to be together, obviously the sort of way you want to be is of mutual respect. I want to remind you of a line in India's preamble where we talk about the dignity of the individual. If you look at that line, it says dignity of the individual in order to ensure the unity and integrity of the nation. And if you see the Constituent Assembly debates, there's a lot of debate about the order of that sentence, whether unity and integrity of the nation should come first or dignity should come first. And Dr. Ambedkar feels that unless everybody's dignity is ensured, you cannot ensure unity and integrity. Right? So in a diverse country or in a diverse civilization, if everybody's dignity has to be maintained, then everybody has to be treated equally. And if everybody has to be treated equally, we need a system which ensures that everybody has an equal voice. A country is not like a house where like there are parents and children, that kind of a hierarchy, but it's more like, say 4 friends who are studying together go into a PG and like then they make some common rules for themselves, right? Or for example, where I work at the Alternative Law Forum, we are a collective. All of us are at the same level, but for our collective meetings, we elect a chair, and whoever is the chair for that day, they are the ones who control the meeting. That doesn't mean they are our boss. That means that we have said, okay, this person will chair, so that we have some administrative efficiency instead of everybody trying to run the meeting, right? And that's what a federal system should be, right? So the states and the union, we have decided in a constitution that we will have a union government, so that for administrative efficiency, something about say defense, the railways, etc., those things can be handled by the union government, and the rest of the things will be handled by the state governments. And our federal system is one where there is a clear demarcation of powers, and where there is a demarcation between the legislative and the executive also. And the constitution itself says states have this power and the union government has this power. We are not a system where the union has decided that the state should have this power, therefore the states have it. It's not up to the union government to decide what power the states have. It's the constitution which says that states have these powers. For example, Karnataka recently brought a bill, an act called the Greater Bengaluru Governance Act. Right? That's because urban local governance or local bodies come under the state list. We all know that we have a state list, union list, and a concurrent list, and local bodies come under a state list. And it's important that states have this power, because Delhi cannot be deciding for Nagaland or for Karnataka what sort of urban local body we have or what sort of Gram Panchayat we have. So in essence, the aspects of daily life have to be decided by the states, and the states have this power to make laws, to bring the values of the constitution into force, to bring the aspirations of the constitution into force. So when we talk about whether states will misuse their powers, it's not so much as a misuse, but states also have obligation to ensure that, when we talk about social justice in the preamble, or when we talk about equality of opportunity, it's up to the states to ensure that, right? So that is one aspect, that our constitution is federal, but it's a federal where it's not like federal like the United States, but it's a different sort of federalism where, you would have seen in the debate, it can be unitary in times of say war, it can be unitary, but otherwise the states have the powers, right? And the second thing is it's federal because the constitution says so, not because the union government has decided, okay, I will have this power, states will have this power. The constitution itself says so. And when we talk about federalism now, we said that states have to have the power to legislate in terms of say health, urban local bodies, etc. Now if states have the power to legislate and states have a duty to ensure that everybody has equal opportunity, states also need to have the power to raise money, right? So it's not just the union government which has the power to raise money, but states also need to have the power to raise money. So the constitution also says that, okay, this is what the union government can do and this is what the state government can do. And the constitution also mandated something called a finance commission, which says that, okay, the money will go, all the income tax is collected by the union government, but that has to be sort of, how do you divide that, right, between the states. So we are a federal system where we recognize the fact that for administrative ease, we will have the union government collect income tax. It will be administratively inefficient if every state collects income tax, because it's a single tax then. So for administrative efficiency, the union government will collect it. We have the 15 finance commissions which will say that, okay, how this will be split up. And that has also become a bone of contention today, the taxation, because states have a duty that we have to ensure that, I have to ensure a good standard of living, but today I am not able to levy taxes, right? We'll come into the issues facing the federalism in a bit, but it's very clear that the Constituent Assembly never imagined India to be a unitary system. It always imagined that states will have some autonomy. You would have heard Dr. Ambedkar state here that the center should not become so powerful that it will chew more than it can handle, and it might fall under its own weight, right? And that's why we say dignity of the individual to ensure the unity and integrity. Of course, the dignity is also in terms of like say you should not have caste discrimination or gender discrimination, etc. But it also fits into this particular aspect. Now, in terms of course, when soon after independence, that was when partition happened. We also wanted a stronger center, etc. Because of the nature of things then, and also Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and others wanted a sort of, they wanted the 5-year plans, they wanted the big industries, the big dams, etc. We may disagree with it now, but like at that point of time, they wanted that. Right? They wanted to follow the Russian model, and there was a strong center, and there were no big challenges because the Congress was in power in the union government and in much of the states till 1967. And after that, we saw challenges to federalism come out when opposition started coming into power in the states. And at that point of time, we also saw frequently that, at least when I was growing up, we'd often read of the state government being dismissed and precedence rule being imposed. It used to happen several times. And many of us know the S.R. Bommai judgment. And one interesting thing which often people forget is the S.R. Bommai judgment was not just about the dismissal of the Bommai government, but it was also the dismissal of the BJP ruled governments at that time, soon after the Babri Masjid demolition which happened. Right? Now, so S.R. Bommai judgment is an important judgment which speaks about federalism as a basic feature of the constitution. Although the word federal itself doesn't come in the constitution, the Bommai judgment says federalism is a basic feature, and that's an important aspect. And that is, to some level, we have travelled, right? From say soon after independence to the Bommai judgment, that is sort of some distance that we have travelled. And we would imagine that after the Bommai judgment came and we have said that federalism is a basic feature, that we would have progressed even more. But unfortunately, we've seen that we have not progressed even more. And it's not just the fault of the current NDA government or just the government since 2014. But like even prior to that, you've seen that there has been an increasing centralizing tendency which has been there. And even the Congress, for example, was never for so much of a federal structure or was not so much for autonomy, because it also felt that the Congress itself, it felt like, oh, we are like a large tent where we have everybody we can manage, so like, we should not give like everybody autonomy, like we should have some sort of a control. So the centralizing tendency started then, but it's really increased now. And I just want to speak for a few minutes about some of the challenges to federalism now, and I'll draw upon this report that was brought out by Bahutva Karnataka. Bahutva Karnataka brought out a series of reports before the 2024 elections, which looked at what the BJP or the NDA, the BJP manifesto promised and what actually happened in reality. And through this, I want to speak about some of the challenges. Right now, culturally, one thing which has been a big problem is the BJP keeps speaking about double engine sarkar. The very concept of a double engine sarkar, saying that if you choose the same government in the state and at the union, you will get more benefit, is an affront to federalism. Why should it be that I get more benefit because I've chosen you here and there? Right? That should not be the way. That should not be the way it plays out. So the very concept of this double engine sarkar itself is an affront, and that is something which they have popularized. So it's almost like people want a double engine sarkar, and people believe that it's okay to have this, and it's like very normal. So that has been the first affront to federalism from their side. The second thing is, if you look at central schemes, right? There's something called centrally sponsored scheme. Right? These centrally sponsored schemes are schemes from the union government, where state government also might put some money, union government will also put some money, and it's administered by the state governments. The centrally sponsored schemes have become a site of coercion. India, we believe, has a model of cooperative federalism, where the union government and state governments have to cooperate. But now you've seen that it's become confrontational federalism or coercive federalism. You might have heard recently about something called PM Shri. PM Shri is a scheme of the union government where they want to develop some 14,000 model schools across the country, and they'll give money to states to do so. We also have another central scheme called the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is a very old scheme which is to fund primary education. Now, the union government has been denying funds to Tamil Nadu and Kerala because they have not agreed to implement this PM Shri scheme, which will also implement NEP, the National Education Policy, in schools. Right? So, education is something ideally that the state should have control of. So, the states are saying that we don't want to implement this, but you give us our share of SSA, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Right? So, when we say cooperative federalism, the union and state should cooperate. The union cannot impose. But now it's come to such a situation that Tamil Nadu had to go to the court to say that we are not getting Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan funds because we are not agreeing to implement their PM Shri model. And Kerala also was fighting, and it sort of gave up a few weeks back because they have not been able to pay teachers' salary, etc. So they said that this is what we have to do. In Karnataka, we have some other centrally sponsored schemes where up to 75% of the money is borne by the state government, but the name is of the union government. Right? The name is of the union government, but the money is paid by the state government. So we have these centrally sponsored schemes which are one, forcing states into doing whatever the union government wants. Two, the state government has to put in the money, do all the work, but the name goes to the union government. And we have schemes. There is a scheme called the PM Swanidhi scheme, which is called the Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors something. During COVID, from street vendors unions, we had asked the union government and state governments for a one-time grant to street vendors. Saying 3 months we didn't have business, so please give us a one-time grant of 15 or 20,000. The union government decided we won't give you grant, but we'll give you a loan, and that loan is called PM Swanidhi. So street vending is something which is very local. Street vending is to be decided by the urban local body as per the Street Vendors Act. But here you have a union government scheme where the Prime Minister's name is put to the scheme, Pradhan Mantri, whatever, Swanidhi, right? PM Swanidhi, and they distribute money to the ULBs and the ULBs give. So much so that people here call it the Modi loan. So the loan is administered over here, everything is done here, but the name is Modi loan, or it's so this is what is happening to centrally sponsored schemes. The second thing is in terms of finances. See, if you pay taxes, the taxes go to the union government, the 15th state, the finance commissions will have to divide it. So what this current government has been doing is, instead of collecting more money through taxes, it has been collecting money through cesses and surcharge. So when you say a cess or a surcharge, it's like if you buy 1 liter of petrol, you have to pay like a surcharge of say 1 rupee or something like that. Now the cess and surcharge does not go into the divisible pool. It is only with the union government. So because of this, the money with the union government is increasing. Although all of this is happening because of development which happens in the states. So much so that earlier the revenue collection by the union government, cess and surcharge used to be around 8%, say 10-12 years ago it used to be 8%. Now cess and surcharge is 28%. So there is lesser money coming to states because of this. Similarly with GST. GST in some ways itself can be said to be unconstitutional because states had the power to impose taxes like VAT, value added tax, sales tax, etc. so that states have revenue. But now that we made it GST, again which was a Congress idea, it's not an idea of the BJP, it was implemented by a Congress idea. The money goes to the center and you have the GST council. In the GST council, of course they say that it is federal because no decision can be taken without, I think, 2/3 of the majority of the council doing it. But the vote share of the union government is 1/3. No, I think, something like that. But basically the math is such that if the union government decides to vote against it, there's no way you can get a majority, right? So in terms of finances, there is a lot of coercion which is happening, and there's absolutely no cooperation which is happening, and the money is being, states are finding it really, really difficult to administer because a lot of the money is being held up over there. There's a very good article by Anivar Arvind and one more person in the wire, I forgot, about this PM Shri, where it says another aspect of how union government is increasing control is through technology. So the state government software and the union government software to disperse money is now linked. And so when they said that we cannot release money to you under this PM Shri, they didn't say it's because you're not doing NEP. They said that in this software to release the money, there is a checkbox. And the checkbox is, have you implemented NEP or have you signed a MOU? Since you've not signed an MOU, then that checkbox cannot be ticked, and therefore it's a technical slack because of which we cannot release money, right? So we are building technical infrastructure in a way to increase centralization. If you look at Aadhaar is under UIDAI, which is again under the union government. So all the state sponsored schemes, all the state government schemes, for example, if you give ration also, you will have to check the Aadhaar. Now there are issues with Aadhaar where there are many people who are excluded from Aadhaar for several reasons. State governments are unable to do anything about these exclusions because Aadhaar is a technology of the union government, right? State government gives pension, widow pension, old age pension, etc. There are exclusions, but state government is not able to do anything. So technologies again proved to be a big factor in sort of centralizing, and in ensuring that the true spirit of federalism is not going to be there. And the PM Shri is something which happened now, but 2 years back there was another scheme again called PM Usha. That was a scheme for higher education. Again in PM Usha they said that if you want funds, you have to implement NEP. If you won't implement NEP, we won't give funds. Now Karnataka has decided not to implement NEP, so we are not getting the funds under PM Usha, and which is leading to universities being in trouble. So one, everything has the PM name, PM. And the second thing is to get money under that, you are forced to do what they want you to do. There are a couple of other things in the last 10 years. There have been two major policy decisions which are very, very big. It impacted everybody across the country and it was completely anti-federal. Can you tell me what those decisions are?
Demonetization.
Huh?
CAA.
Yeah, okay. But that was at least not yet implemented. Somebody said it here.
Or demonetization.
Demonetization.
The bill they have brought into for CMs and PMs.
Yeah, but something else which was implemented and led to a lot of chaos and
Lockdown.
the lockdown. So if you see demonetization and the lockdown during the pandemic, they're actually a complete violation of federalism. Absolutely no state governments were consulted. Right? In cooperative federalism, you have to consult. And these led to real issues in the state. Demonetization led to loss of revenue for the state. The decision by the union government and the after effects had to be managed by the states who are not consulted. The reason why I'm saying this, we often don't see some of these decisions from the lens of federalism. Of course, we know the havoc by demonetization, of course, we know the havoc through the lockdowns, but we never think about it as, is this a violation of federalism? Right? The situation when the lockdown was imposed, it was not the same in all the states. States could have imposed lockdowns. States could have chosen whether they want to do a lockdown. Or states could have chosen, which later in the pandemic, as you saw that different states started taking different decisions, right? Based on local conditions, because with such a vast country, you cannot have the same decision. These also have to be seen as an affront to federalism, but these were not questioned on that lens. People are questioning demonetization and COVID pandemic for many right reasons, which is correct, but we also have to question it on this lens, that whether it is a violation of federalism. How is it that the union government could take this decision? And if you take it to courts, the verdicts come after many years. Now demonetization, they said, now what do you do after so many years, right? So it's important that we start viewing all these and state governments start questioning the union government about why are we supposed to follow what you have said. The other big thing is the NIA. If you see the NIA Act, right, the National Investigating Agency Act, the Chhattisgarh government in fact challenged it in the Supreme Court saying that this is unconstitutional because it violates the spirit of federalism. Now if you see the state list, the police and investigation is a matter under the state list. In the Constituent Assembly, there was a wide debate about this thing about investigation because the Central Bureau of Investigation was added in the union list. So there was a lot of debate. And Dr. Ambedkar said, when we say Central Bureau of Investigation, we only mean there has to be a central agency which collects intelligence. We don't mean for them to investigate. The investigation, the criminal investigation has to be done by the state governments. When we say Central Bureau of Investigation, he only meant that we might need an agency. That is not disagreeable. We might need an agency at a union level to gather intelligence, right? Because everybody cannot be gathering intelligence. But that was not meant for investigation. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the CBI, and the CBI itself is set up under a Delhi Police Act. One is the CBI was there, and so this NIA Act was challenged in the Maharashtra High Court. They said that because CBI exists, similarly this exists, without paying attention to the fact that in the Constituent Assembly debates, it's clearly said that investigation only means gathering intelligence. The second thing is for CBI to conduct investigation in a particular state, state governments have to give their approval, right? But with the NIA, it's not like that. With the NIA, you can decide. The NIA will come and say that, okay, I will take up the investigation of this case. So in Karnataka, in Mangalore, we saw 3 incidents happen during May, June, July. First, there's a person called Ashraf who was lynched. There's a Muslim migrant worker who was lynched. Then there's a person called Suhas Shetty who's a rowdy sheeter who's murdered. After that, there's a person called Rahman who's again murdered as an act of revenge. Only the Suhas Shetty case goes to NIA. NIA comes and decides to investigate. but the murder of Rahman or the murder of Ashraf, NIA does not take up. And if you see even the DJ Halli, KJ Halli case, the NIA came and the NIA then decided, okay, then so many people are charged under UAP, etc. Now the NIA it includes even offences such as trafficking, which are not really a threat to national security. It is a crime, of course, it's not a threat to national security. But again, this question of NIA is not seen as a question of federalism. In fact, we have people in Karnataka saying, hand over these cases also to NIA. No, we don't hand over any cases to NIA. We should not be handing over any cases to NIA. NIA should not exist itself, right? So again, this is one area where people don't see it from a lens of federalism, but it is important to see that something like a NIA goes against the federal nature of the constitution. And we've also seen how the ED and others have been used in the last few years, right? The other thing is, of course, to talk about the NEP itself. If you see the National Education Policy, it says that henceforth we'll have something like a Higher Education Commission of India, right, which is going to decide Vice Chancellor appointments, which is going to decide a lot of aspects of higher education. The entire NEP is trying to is trying to centralize things. Whereas state governments had control of education. In fact, one of the big problems is that education, which was only in the state list, was also added to the concurrent list, and which is causing some of these problems. And we should always saying that education should remain only in the state list and it should not be in the concurrent list. Because why should education be in the concurrent list? Each state can make its own policies, right? So, and even if you see the NEET, right? The NEET is the national level medical test. We've seen the sort of problems it has caused, like say in places like Tamil Nadu, people have committed suicide because of this, and state governments have no power. And because of something like NEET, say Tamil Nadu and Karnataka keep building good medical colleges, people from across come and take admission here, and people from here don't get admission. Those state governments, they don't build medical colleges, but their students are able to take the benefit elsewhere. It's not a bad thing for the students. I'm not saying that. Of course, youth need to get the opportunities. But I'm saying that when you make a centralized test like this, it causes a lot of problems and it doesn't ensure the equality of opportunity that we have been speaking about. And the other thing is also agriculture. If you look at the farm laws which came, the farm laws, the union government had no business passing those laws, right? For example, the agricultural produce market committees, those come under the state list and state governments have to decide. So why was union government passing a law which says that who can sell in the APMC, who can sell outside, or what is the power of the APMC, etc. Similarly, under Amit Shah, they set up a ministry for cooperatives. Cooperatives are under the state list. But now cooperatives have gone because of that union government. And Article 370 we all know, I'm not going to speak in detail, there is enough to read. But one alarming thing from Article 370 which everybody should take note, other than the fact that what was done to state of Jammu and Kashmir is really unfair. In addition, they downgraded a state to a union territory, which means tomorrow any state can become a union territory. Tomorrow Bangalore can become a union territory. And you must know that there are a lot of calls, a lot of people who ask for Bangalore to be made into a union territory, saying that this state government will not handle it, make it a union territory, let the central government handle it. They'll say center only, right? There's a calls to make Hyderabad the union territory. So the whole 370 and the way the Supreme Court justified what the government did is like Article 1 says India is a union of states, tomorrow might become a union of union territories. Right? When you say union of state, it means that you exist as a state. How can you be downgraded to a union territory without your consent? The whole Article 370 was done in such a sleight of hand. It was equated where governor is equal to an elected assembly, right? And then president and then parliament can decide. So tomorrow parliament can decide and make Bangalore a union territory. And what are we going to do, right? This is the sort of nature of the challenge. In terms of the role of governors, I think there has been enough discussion and we don't need to see. And the Delhi service bill also we know, right? Because the Aam Aadmi Party was in power in Delhi and they brought in the Delhi service bills which took over much of the state's powers on administration to hand it over to the union government itself. So these were just some of the challenges. I'll just end in another 5 minutes and then we can move to a discussion. these challenges are there because of a particular reason. The challenges to federalism which were there under the Congress regime were due to a different reason, that Congress itself believed that we should maintain, let us not give power. But it was not like the Congress was opposed to federalism in principle, or that they didn't want to give autonomy. That was a different kind of problem. That was more a question of paternalism, saying maybe we know best, etc., etc. But under the current regime, the problem of federalism is different. And here the problem of federalism is that the people who are the leaders of the RSS have always stood for a unitary system, and they have said so, right? So for example, Mr. Golwalkar in his bunch of thoughts, he very clearly says, and I'll quote, "We are one country, one society and one nation with a community of life values and the secular aspirations and interests." This secular doesn't mean the secular we understand. Hence it is natural that the affairs of the nation are governed through a single state of the unitary type. The present federal system generates and feeds separatist feelings. In a way, it negates the truth of a single nationhood and is therefore divisive in nature. It must be remedied and the constitution amended and cleaned so as to establish unitary form of government. So, what we're seeing right now with one nation, one ration, one nation, one election, etc., is a move towards a unitary form of government. And when we say that Hindi must be respected and Hindi will serve to unite, this Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan sort of thing is a great trend. So the Hindu Rashtra is also one which will make it a unitary form of government. The push towards Hindi is also to make it a unitary form of government. And this is the principle with which they are going. Now even if you see one nation, one election, suppose you really implement one nation, one election, right? And say there is a coalition government of two parties, say in Bihar, even if the NDA wins, right? It's JDU and BJP. Suppose one of them, they decide to break away, that government falls. If you have one nation, one election, till 3 years or 4 years, there's not going to be another government. Now if they implement this one nation, one registration, they want to do this for land registration, right? They are saying we are doing one nation, one registration, so that it's very simple to do registration of land. But the important point is, right now registration of land gives revenue to state governments. Once you do one nation, one registration, the revenue will again move to the union government. And all of these are happening because their ideologues asked for a unitary government, and that is the way they are going. And therefore federalism is very important for us, because if we have to retain this idea of India as a land where different people live together harmoniously with equal power, then federalism is the way to go, right? Diversity, pluralism and federalism go hand in hand. We cannot divorce the three. The push for a Hindu Rashtra is also a push away from federalism. The push for a Hindu Rashtra is towards a unitary form of government, where other states will not have power. If you already look at BJP chief ministers, you don't even remember their names, right? They're so insignificant because they have absolutely no power. Does anybody know the chief minister of Gujarat? You don't. Forget the chief ministers, even union ministers, you barely know anybody, because who's able to, other than maybe one or two ministers, barely anybody is able to dictate policy. Everything comes from the Prime Minister's office, right? So federalism is being hurt in such a way that, forget states, even in the union there is such a centralization that there is one office which controls everything. So therefore it's up to us to challenge this, it's up to us to talk about it, it's up to us to think about it. The other thing is, the sort of imperialism with which they have pushed is also causing a reverse sort of consolidation. If you saw on Twitter recently, there has been a lot of fights on the whole question of Kannada also, right? Or who can come to Karnataka, what about whether migrants can come. Recently, DK Shivkumar told employers in Karnataka, saying if you have Bihari employees, please give them a day's holiday so that they can go vote. That was also attacked by some people, saying why are you helping people of Bihar? I mean, he's only saying let them go vote, it's a constitutional right? But people said that why are you doing this, right? There's a whole question of who can come here. Should Karnataka have an inner line permit, right? Northeast states have an inner line permit. People are asking for Karnataka to have an inner line permit. Why will we want an inner line permit, right? But these are issues, if we don't address it, if we don't have a proper open discussion about this, we will come into a problem sooner or later. So the sort of top-down imposition which they're is causing another sort of battle, which is again going towards a unitary kind of thing, right? So there was this Kannada activist who was also attacking Mohandas Pai because he's Konkani, and that makes no sense because Konkani is also a language of Karnataka, right? Karnataka does not mean only Kannada. Karnataka means Konkani, Tulu, Kodava, Byari, Navayar, Irula, Sanketi, like there are 14-15 languages of Karnataka itself. When we resist Hindi imperialism, we must also not be imperialistic in our own ways, right? And the whole the system which is there now has caused a lot of problems. So, for example, when we say, why is UP government getting so much of the tax? Why is Bihar getting so much of the tax? It is a valid question, but we must also remember that a lot of the construction which is happening here is by migrants from, say, UP, Bihar, Assam, or Bengal. So the revenue which is being generated here is on the labor of workers from those states. So how do we understand that? Or when we say the revenue, I definitely am not saying that Karnataka should give away all its revenue to other states. There has to be a wider discussion. But I'm saying these things are also important to think about. That the labor which is powering the engine here, a lot of the new labor is coming from those states also, right? The other thing is, if we say that Karnataka's revenue should not be shared so much with UP, Bihar, then what about Bangalore's revenue? Should it not be shared with Bidar, Gulbarga and Shivamogga? Like, how do we understand that? And how do we understand the principle of federalism when we apply it within the state? Right? Federalism doesn't deal with, say, urban local bodies. It is between states and like a union government. But I'm saying the same principle also applies here. These are all things which we have to think of much more. And if we don't think of these things much more, and if we don't resist Hindi imperialism, it's causing a lot of other effects over here, which are again sort of pushing towards another kind of imperialism over here, which we don't want. What we want is for people of different faiths, languages, and everybody to live harmoniously, and for, of course, for local languages to be respected, and for local autonomy. But how do we ensure that all this happens is the key question, and therefore I felt like it was really timely that Dhwani organized this discussion on federalism, and thank you so much for organizing. And I'll just end over here. Thank you.
Thank you.